have you found any secrets to like really find out, okay, this is like a way that I can kind of find out the truth and try and figure out like who's really right for the program?
Right. So there's always the blue chipper in which, like, okay, everybody wants to no-brainer volleyball-wise. You'll take less stuff character-wise if they're great, because regardless, you got to recruit the highest athletes that you can.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to know about them. You're going to try to get research on them. But I found that when the back half of the roster is the players that you really have to invest the most in as far as, like, getting that research done. To me, once again, like, understanding the people, understanding the personalities of the team. It's like, we want you to be high-level people.
Right.
Like, high-level people. So as long as you can take care of your school, as long as you can take care of the volleyball part, and, like, it's like, yeah, everybody, you come to college to, like, find stuff that you want to do. So to me, it's like, it's almost like an outlet.
Yeah. You can handle the heat. Yeah. You can handle the heat. Yeah. Out of system, you can handle the heat.
Booyaka! Welcome back to another episode of Can't Handle the Heat. It's your boy G Swizz. To my right, Jokesy. How we doing, Jokesy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. All the way across the room, the one and only Hawaii's chosen child, Micah Mom.
Doing great.
Good, man. We look great. We look awesome. Before we get into it, before we reveal the guests, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, allvolleyball.com. Doesn't matter what type of volleyball we're playing, what level, what age. You can be 90. Guess what? They have all the tools you need to play volleyball. And congratulations for paying you 20% off. What's the promo code, Micah? OOS for 20% off, as Micah just said. Link in the bio. Link
Capital.
In the bio. But let's get into it. We have on special guests. In fact, I might have to take a second here because it just gets me so emotional. just looking at him and just thinking about the whole thing. We found the one person that, one, listens to our pod, and two, allows us to drag him onto the podcast. We have the National Assistant of the Year, coaches of Hawaii, is now a Baylor Bear, the Joshua Walker. Here.
Thank you.
Anything, Josh, for you? Anything.
Anything that I want to say?
Yeah. Is there let's start with that. Josh, is there anything you would like to say?
First of all, I mean, in all seriously, really appreciate what you guys have been able to do together. Really cool watching you guys grow up and just, like, take this by storm. So it's like, as far as professionalism on and off the court, I think you guys are crushing that aspect. So looking forward to watching people like you influence the world.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. And right back at you. Josh was a man with a plan. Still is. Remember back in Hawaii, we would you'd be stuck driving me around, I remember, in vans. And when I always tell that story, and you'd be like, oh, my God, I got Gage again. Here we go. Because how it works in Hawaii, and I have to explain this, is when you're on road trips, the coach has a van, a minivan, and they get 4 players. And you'll get stuck with me. And we always had a good old time, didn't we, Josh?
You had a good time.
I had a great time.
Joshua Roadways.
Joshua Roadways.
All-American Roadways.
All-American Roadways. We had to pivot the name.
Oh, really? Every single person was it you, Rado?
Who was in there?
Stein was in there. Chewy has been there. We had a lot of – that van was very competitive, very good players in that band. And then, like, as people got, like, older, then they would shift out to – other vans, but
like I picked up a Charlie. That's what happened.
Yeah,
that was obviously nobody wants to be the head coach. That's just a matter of fact on a team. Nobody wants to go right at the head. It doesn't matter who the head coach is. And Charlie, he had this thing. He always took the freshmen, and our freshman messed it up one year. He got so mad, and he made all the seniors come, and that was my year.
Wait, it was me.
Yeah, or. Whoever you were in Charlie's van.
No, it was me.
Whoever
and Pat.
messed it up, we
Pat,
had to go ride in Charlie's van.
No, Pat was talking about something like inappropriate, and then we were also on a 4-game losing streak. Not a good combo, let me tell you. And then after a game, switched. He's like, "Yeah, you can get out of here."
I think Austin was in that van too.
Austin, yeah, it was me, Patrick Austin. I forget. I don't know. We're all.
Pretty much, if you want to be an All-American, you just rode in Josh's van. And
good man. And how? So no minivans at Baylor.
No minivans at
really.
Not one minivan.
I want to kind of get into that about first before I compare Hawaii to Baylor. I just want to talk about coaching men's versus women's volleyball. What are the biggest differences in coaching men's versus women's volleyball?
The biggest difference by far is the substitutions. By far.
How many substitutions? do you
15
get?
subs on the women's side. 15.
How many for men's?
6.
Gauge.
I didn't know it was
It's
15.
international. You use international rules.
I don't play women's international volleyball.
Men.
No, men's. You didn't know men's?
I knew we had 6
Why did you say that?
for dramatic effect.
Okay.
Got you, Josh.
For the people.
For the people. Thank you.
So you can imagine with 15 subs how many different combinations you can do. You can literally recruit players that are only going to play three rotations, back row or front row. Change the dynamic of your bench. More people expect the opportunity to play, that kind of thing. On the men's side with 6 subs, like at some point you're only as good as the weakest player on the court. So the 15 subs is by far the biggest difference. And because of that combination, there's more combinations of like head coaches and what they like to do with their substitutions. Like sometimes they want to max it out. Sometimes they want to play like maybe run the 6-2 the whole time. You can't do that on the men's side. So
Do you think 15 subs is good for the sport?
I think it depends on a few things, because yes, more players get opportunities to play, but it makes players more specialized. So I would compare it to, like, on the men's side, the top players on the men's side, they're good at pretty much everything. The top players on the women's side, like Local Augustin, she had a stint in this past year when she wasn't even playing in the back row. Like, that would never happen on the men's side. So, but yeah, as far as attacking in the front row, you get some girls that are really good at it. As far as passing and playing defense, you get girls that are at a way higher level at a bunch of different programs in comparison to men. Like men, you drop down a few levels if they're not one of the top ranked teams in the country. Like, their back row defense could be not nearly as good as an average team on the women's side.
Do you feel like that hurts the woman when they go to play professionally? Because I feel like we've seen Jordan Larson, Kelsey Robinson, like these ball control outsides have longer stints with the national team and like will like continue to start because they're so, I guess, complete as players. And there's been a lot of like huge talent in the NCAA that hasn't made that jump necessarily and hasn't maybe picked up as big of a role as some guys like DeFalco, or like on the men's side when you're killing the NCAA, sometimes you make that jump a little bit cleaner than the women's side. I'm not sure if that's even true, but I feel like, because internationally it's 6 subs for women, correct?
Right.
So like Catherine Plummer, Logan Eggleston, like these types of players, then they have to kind of catch up for the back row like playing of stuff that they've missed out on a lot in college. Do you think that ends up hurting them?
Absolutely. You can even look not just the servicey part, the serving. You got middles. You got some middles that don't even serve at all.
Because libero can serve.
Libero can serve. So it absolutely hurts development as far as long term. And it's like what programs are they still like valuing the USA part of it and trying to like still get the reps? Like, okay, try to get you the back reps. Some programs are not going to spend time getting you those reps. It's like, nope, this is what you're
here
doing.
For 4 years. You're going to do this for 4 years, so we're good.
Exactly. Exactly. So absolutely, it hurts the development. So yeah, it's like, and that's probably what international coaches talk about the most when it comes to bringing American women in. Like, you have so many talented players, but at some point you still have to train them a little bit if they're only playing 3 rotations or they're not playing all the way around.
There's 2 sides to that too, because then there's like all the DSs and stuff. It provides a big opportunity for them to, like, if you take away subs, who's gonna go sign 3-4 DSs on a roster, or why would you? Because that, like, on the men's side, they're not, for the most part, they're not bringing in a ton of liberos that like are on scholarship, I guess technically. So you take away opportunities that way. And did Logan? I don't know if you know the background. Is she not with the national team at all? Like, did she just not even get the call?
Yeah, I don't know the background with Logan, but I just know for women that finishing their college season and go straight to play pro, it is a lot on their bodies because obviously the women's season in college, you're playing so many more games in a week, and then you shift to adjustment and living overseas. Like, same thing with Yasi. Like, she was really burnt out after her first half a year playing overseas, to the point where she just took the year off this past year and just stayed in New York with her boyfriend. But yeah, so it's one of those things in which it's probably that transition is the most physically taxing and so many new environments that if there's time that you're taking some time off, it's probably now. Plus, with the Olympics coming up next year, like if she doesn't feel like she's in that top group in that rotation right now because it's a big summer for that, then it's like, yeah, just take the rest and then see where you're at next year. But yeah, I'm not sure if she actually got asked back into the gym or not.
She'll be in there for the Pan Am group. She'll be in there later.
Okay.
So, but not the main team. Also, the 15 subs is also a thing where obviously when you're players, maybe you have a different mindset. You're a coach now. You were in our shoes not too long ago. About, I think every coach has their own way of coaching, and I think for us, their roles when we're playing is like just let us do our thing, kind of. And some coaches need to like. I'm not saying don't coach or anything like that, but for us, it's more like, in the match, you don't want the coach to be like a huge, like that's why you practice, and then during the games, you kind of let them do their thing, and you give them stuff here and there. Do you ever feel like with 15 subs, like the coach is like, I'm gonna take over this game, or like they end up hurting their team with all these crazy sub or tactics, rather than helping their team?
Yeah, it's give and take. Like I said, just how you even come down to how you train. Like if you have the subs, are you actually spending time on front that one chance in which you run out of subs when you get past the 25? Are you actually spending time with your DS being able to play in the front row if that ends up happening and that kind of stuff? But yeah, it's like the coach absolutely has their fingerprint more on the game. But like I said, it's like whatever. I think when it comes to coaching and playing, finding players that are gonna like want that more. So if you are a coach that really likes to micromanage and like to have your fingerprints on everything, like all the time, you're going to recruit those kind of players in which, okay, they need that. Like even when it comes to like serving, like some coaches on the women's side, there's so many coaches that will always tell them where to serve. And it's like, okay, I know you watch video. I know you went over the scouting report. Everybody should have a good idea where to serve. But still, like some girls have to see it, right? Whether they know it or not, they want that kind of feedback because they feel like it helps them. So
Gotcha.
In the end, it's less about what the coach wants. It's more about what the player needs. And yeah, at some point the coaches, like we know, like we can't go out there and play, but you want to give them the tools as they're going. Like, okay, early in the season, a lot more communication, a lot more like, okay, stuff we got to make sure we iron out. But towards the back end of the season, the best teams, like yeah, they're very self-led and that kind of stuff. But you don't get that with every team. Not every team is great, right?
How annoying is it when the players don't look at the scouting report for you? Because I know in Hawaii that was one of the big jobs is Josh would give great scouting report, and then there were cases where some guys didn't take it seriously. But you're up to like 3 a.m. the night before doing that or whatever.
Whatever it takes, right? I put that on me, right? Because that's how competitive I am. If I'm going through and taking this time to do a scouting report and there's a player that there's nothing they get out of it, then how else can I take it? Like, all right, I have to make it so there's something that they can understand or something they're going to grasp to be able to, like, okay, if they has a long night studying or something like that, or something else comes up in their life and they end up having to play a game, like how can they pivot? Like, okay, is it short term? Is it summary? Like there's got to be something in there for them to make sure that they can retain the information easier. So I don't put onus on them to understand like everything that's got. I'm the one that takes all the time. Like being a student athlete is 2 full-time jobs. As a coach, like it's my job to go through, watch the video, come up with the plan, and then be able to present that to them. Like I can't have them spending that same time trying to formulate a plan for them. Like they should just be able to get the information the most efficiently as possible. And then, yeah, hopefully it sticks. But if not, then there's cues and keywords that will say like during the game, like, hey, remember this person's front row, this is what we're taking, that kind of stuff. And that way it's like kind of helps them feel like it's more of a team effort versus like if you don't know it, we're in a bad spot. Like you don't want people going into the game feel like they don't have a solution when things aren't going right. It's like that's the thing about coaching. You always want to feel like there's a solution.
Well, yeah, you have kids like that. It's like, oh, who actually had school and stuff, and you have kids who just don't. You're like, oh, if you learn this, you get a lollipop. So you gotta bribe them into learning the scouting report.
Please, man.
No, it's interesting though because that also is like more like how much I just love the sport of volleyball. We were talking about yesterday on the pod. We were shooting a pod and we were talking about how the type of athletes that each program is like bringing in and they're like targeting and stuff, and playing Division 1 sports. I get a lot of parents that like at our camps and stuff that ask about, what should I do with my kid? Should I send him to this like smaller school, like D2, D3, where they'll play a lot and all that? I'm like, if you're playing D1 sports, you have to love the sport of volleyball, because it drives us nuts at UH when we're in academic center and people are like complaining that they have to go to practice every single day. I'm like that should be some of the best or the best part of your day every single day. Like the school stuff, that's what I'm complaining about.
Hey, man.
Like, I want less of this and just be in the gym all day. And so you see that, like, but it's also a reason why a lot, like, there's UH programs who aren't, they're not elite level programs there. It's like very mid-major school with some programs. And so that shows you like just the difference in some of the programs. I apologize for my ignorance, but can you explain, because you were just promoted to associate head coach, and I always see that, and I never like researched into it. Obviously, I'm sure compensation and stuff like that, but what exactly are the details behind being an assistant into an associate head coach, and like what that, I guess, means in a sense?
So like a little higher on the resume, right? So
Yeah.
you'll get more like head coaching responsibilities, as far as like what's actually going on in the school, like the administration, they'll see you in more of like, they'll give you more responsibility as well. They look at you at a little bit higher level. But obviously it's like the real part of it is the compensation, like especially if you work at a state school, like as an associate head coach, there's a different pay grade. So you are able to get paid more as an associate than you are as an assistant. So that's the biggest difference, but also it comes with like more responsibility too. So that's, and then if you are trying to get another job or something like that, it's better to have that title on the resume than just the assistant. And then, yeah, it's like if something happens to the head coach, like everybody already knows, okay, like if they're sick or something like that, everybody knows to go to make sure stuff gets done as well. So it kind of just like makes things a little bit clearer for the administrators, I would say, in comparison.
It's the head coach's job of dumping off responsibility. I'm just making the associate that you take away more responsibility. Smart. It's a smart move. Was that like the plan when you originally came in, or like they were just so like they just kind of decided that after season?
Yeah, it was the plan coming in, but every school is different as far as like how people get to that spot. Like some schools like, okay, you got to get a certain level of success in the season for that to be possible. Some's like, oh, you had to work a certain amount of years. So it's really different school to school, how they kind of dangle that carrot. Depending on what your resume is, maybe you can get it right away. That's kind of what happened with A&M and their coaches. Like both of them are associate on day one, just because of their experience that they have. So it's different for every school, just as far as what they value and that kind of stuff. And yeah, you can have 2 associate head coaches on staff. Like it's
Also
ranges.
budget thing too.
Yeah.
Speaking of different schools and whatnot, what was the biggest difference when you got to Baylor, or a couple differences? Because if I'm being honest, Baylor probably has more resources than UH. UH is doing a great job, men's volleyball top notch, but this is a Power 5 Texas school that we're talking about here, where they ain't messing around over there. So like, what is like some like, there's some cool things or some like stuff where you're like, okay, like maybe you're like, oh, I have to do this, but then like, oh no, we already have this, or these are like the facilities, or this is what you get. You're like, all right, this is nice.
Yeah, it's I would say the biggest difference is just how much more personnel you have. So like at UH, essentially everything I was doing, I get to Baylor, like 3 other people I meet on the first day that are doing stuff I was doing at UH. So you just have so many more people involved with the day-to-day stuff. So it's like, okay, as far as managing all those people and that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, that's a lot in general. It's like, okay, to manage that many more people, but also like, yeah, the simple resources. Like at Baylor, there's a place just for athletes to eat, and it's like a really nice like calf that has premium food and that kind of stuff. That stuff we know the athletes need.
Salad bar.
Yeah, but like it's really nice, and yeah, just the facilities in general. Like pretty much everybody has their own space where they can train without necessarily getting distracted. Like right now, they're building a brand new basketball facility and a brand new football facility at the same time. Like, just like a lot of money dropped at the same time for these two big capital projects that most programs, like, they're doing one, if that. But the fact that you can even like, oh yeah, we'll do them both at the same time, it's like, yeah, kind of crazy.
Is it kind of like when in terms of resources, it's like, okay, oh, we need this, it's done, or oh, okay, we need to get this, it's done. Was it like that? I mean, I'm not trying to. Was it like that at UH or whatnot, or was it like, well, we kind of, make sure we have the funding here, funding there, or anything like that? I don't want to paint a bad picture about UH. Great school, great funding, but in turn, like I said, there's a big discrepancy.
Yeah, because the biggest thing with UH was the travel budget was so much bigger than everybody else's.
True.
And then they give money for teams to even the conference to come and play. And like, so UH is dishing out a lot more money just for travel from both sides of it. So the operating budget is different when it comes to that. But everybody knows how much UH gets supported. So it's not like oh, they don't have any money. It's just you have to spend so much more money on transportation than other places. So like being in Texas or even being in the Big 12, like the travel isn't nearly as hard. So it's like, okay, when you're getting funded as an athletic department a lot more, then we can not just get a bus, we can get a nicer bus, or we can charter more and that kind of stuff, because you're operating at a higher level. So you still want to spend that money when you get the opportunity to make it more comfortable for the athletes. But yeah, so just to kind of circle back to the money part, and as far as like the differences in how that gets handled, it depends on like the school in general,
right,
and how much money the school is getting, because people don't really look at that. Okay, like how much is your tuition and how much is the school bringing in, not athletics but the school, like how much are they generating, and then how much of a chunk do they give to athletics. You have some schools that they're not going to put a lot of money into athletics. It's just the way it is, whether they're getting the funding or not. I mean, you look at Ivy League schools, same thing. Right. It's like, yeah, there's a lot. It's really expensive to go to schools. They're not pushing that all back into athletics. So yeah, I think it ranges a lot in regards to what the administrators value with the athletic department. So as you are someone in my position, that's what you're looking for. It's like, okay, how much are they actually funding athletics? Like, what are the athletes actually getting? Mm-hmm. There is a level in which you don't want to spoil the athletes, but at the same time, you want to make sure that they feel like they have everything they need. Mm-hmm. And then, like, some of it is like, okay, let's just try to keep up with everybody else, for sure.
Got you. And I think, I'm sorry, you have a question, Joe?
Go you go if you're bouncing off that.
No, you bounce off that.
I was gonna ask more so just again like the transition. There's two parts to the question. One, what are like the biggest things that you learned, I guess, from both Charlie Wade and Milan Zarkovic, your colleagues at University of Hawaii? And two, was there something that your new staff in Baylor asked you to bring over, not over from like I guess duties perspective, but more so from like a program wide like just culture or whatever? Is there anything that they asked you and wanted you to kind of bring over to Baylor from UH?
Yeah, so the biggest thing from Charlie and Milan, I think that's unique, is Charlie wasn't afraid to hire people that were different than him, different backgrounds, because he likes to be challenged as well. So I think that aspect alone is like, you kind of have to respect someone who's willing to like go out on a limb and like hire someone that like, all right, they respect what they've done, they respect their work, but at the same time, completely different background and that kind of stuff. So you're going to get different kind of feedback. So even just working together and how you communicate with each other, it takes time and you have to work on it. So I think that was pretty unique, just as far as like, okay, like we're pretty different staff, but we all like figured out how to work well with each other. And then just as far as stuff bringing over to Baylor, is like Ryan was in a pretty unique situation in which like everybody staff underneath him like moved on. So both of the assistants got head coaching jobs, athletic trainer, same, like like the academic coach got an upgrade, strength coach went somewhere else. Like it was everybody top to bottom. Like he had to hire all those people starting like in January of last year. So you can imagine how stressful that is when you're trying to get the staff together. So this first year, like coming in, like he knows what he's comfortable doing. Really comfortable in the practice gym. Like he's really good at that kind of stuff. So for me coming in, like he probably gave me a lot of responsibility just as far as like, okay, the prep and the scouting, that kind of stuff. But also like tech coordinator, like hiring that position. We didn't have a tech at UH. So for me, I'm like, I don't even really know what all a tech can do, just because like a lot of stuff we were doing, like we just kind of went with volumetrics and kind of went from there. But yeah, like how unique having a tech is and what they can bring and how they can help the coach kind of manage like lineups and rotations and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and like just hiring people where you know what their strengths are going to be right away. I think Ryan did a good job with that part of it. And then also just kind of as we're going, like, okay, being more specific as far as like what he wants and how he wants things. But for me this year, considering the staff was all new, I was like, hey, whatever you need me to do, I can do it. And like I just kind of put that responsibility on me to make sure I'm contributing as much as possible. But I think yeah, obviously the success that we had at Hawaii, like you lean in on that a lot. Like you win at a high level. Like, yeah, you value that opinion coming into the gym. So I know Ryan respects my opinion, and I have a lot of respect for him just because the teams I played against in college, like his Cal Baptist teams, are always super competitive, and I always had a lot of respect for them. So yeah, just things kind of worked out. We're working together now, and it's been great so far.
This is kind of on topic, kind of off topic. I kind of have a bunch of questions. The first one is, why do you think that the middle of the country's kind of exploded for women's volleyball? And just because of like the culture of how much volleyball is being played in, for example, Hermosa Beach in like California. On the men's side, it's always been California kind of. And when did that shift happen? I don't even know when that shift happened, and why is it that shift happened, kind of.
I mean, you can look back to as far as like when Title IX started and how there's more scholarship pushed into women's volleyball. I mean, Vanderbilt is just adding women's volleyball. Oklahoma State doesn't have women's volleyball, so like that's like the only like major Division I school that doesn't have. Everybody else has it. So at some point, it's been generations and a couple generations in which like, okay, they're pushing more money in women's athletics, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that volleyball is popular all over the world, like obviously we understand that, but it's because it's a fun sport to play, it's a fun sport to watch. And yeah, it's at some point, like not everybody wants to play basketball. And then I think even just as far as like the facilities that you're having on the women's volleyball side, like people have started because you're having whatever money you have for football, because the Midwest, like they got a ton of money for facilities. They're pushing that throughout the athletic department. So now you got really nice facilities for volleyball. Big Ten probably has the best as far as like what they've been able to do as far as funding, like TerraFlex floors, big crowds, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a combination of the athletes just being attracted to that. So you're getting higher caliber athletes playing the sport. And their dads played football, their moms played whatever sport in college too, and you're just seeing like their kids just kind of come through and be beasts, and they're playing volleyball at such a younger age now versus like, okay, play basketball and volleyball and then shift over. It's like it's just gotten more eyes on the sport, and I think because of that, it's kind of pushed the level all over the country when people are saying, oh man, we can actually make some money off of this, and it's starting to get towards that part with volleyball.
And then that bleeds into the youth because they are growing up watching a Nebraska or a Wisconsin and then get inspired and have more probably drive. And like, for example, kids in UH, I grew up watching you. And so like being able to watch a high level volleyball team is kind of rare, at least for the men's side. So that like inspires me, and I think helps a lot of the UH kids or kids that grew up watching UH men's volleyball like perform at a higher level, perhaps. So maybe that's why it like Nebraska, Wisconsin, Baylor, Texas, like them being so legit bleeds into like the youth programs, seeing these like superstars and then becoming them, I guess, in a weird way.
Yeah,
I think that's true.
Yeah, for sure. Because like I grew up watching NBA on TV. It's not like I tried, right?
Right.
But even just like when I started playing volleyball, it was free in high school for me to play. Like then I realized, oh yeah, not everybody plays for free.
Yeah.
There's not sanctioned high schools. Boys volleyball isn't sanctioned in Texas, so
Yeah.
it's like opportunity to play, opportunity to watch whenever you want, like
Yeah.
without trying. Like now that much more stuff is streamed, and then you have like Big Ten Network, ESPN Plus that's streaming, so you can watch it at such a younger age now that it's like you get more kids that want to play and want to get into it. So it's like now all of a sudden we have a lot more kids that are just growing up and it's been a part of their lives the whole time, versus like, all right, the only time we were watching volleyball was really the Olympics before.
Yeah, for real.
But Hawaii was unique because like it was on TV.
Yeah.
Just like any other sport.
Yeah.
So.
It's on YouTube too. That's the biggest thing. Also, it gets posted on YouTube. So that's how you get these fans in the Midwest that are just like, or like the most random states are like, just find your games on YouTube because they get posted. Used to be a huge volleyball fan too, and then I forget who it is now.
But it was even overseas. Like one of my first contracts, like they saw my YouTube stuff, and they went off of that. Like my games were uploaded on YouTube, and that's what they went off of, which is pretty unique. And which like, just the access to the sport is just so much easier than it used to be.
And then for recruiting, we talk about recruiting a lot. We think it's very interesting. And I was just listening to this random thing, not just listening, but I had listened to this thing about a guy that when he looks for tenants, this is kind of a off topic, but I promise it'll lead back to it. He like does this insane background check. And because of that, he's like, every tenant I've had stays for like 30 years, and I've never have an issue with them because my initial check is like so ridiculous. Like I go to their house where they live now. I go to like their kids' schools and like ask, is a kid behaving? Like he just goes like as much as he can in depth, and then never has to worry about it again. So he's figured like, I'll just put the work in the beginning. And we always talk about like, how do you make sure you recruit the right kid for the culture and also skill wise, and what are like some secrets or trades that you've picked up of how like just how to figure out, because everyone's going to put their best foot forward. Like every parent's going to say my kid's great, like attitude's great, grades are great, like, and then the coach, maybe their club coach will say the same. Like how do you navigate that with everyone saying that they're a great kid, great whatever the case may be? And like, have you found any secrets to like really find out, okay, this is like a way that I can kind of find out the truth and try and figure out like who's really right for the program?
Right. So there's always the blue chipper in which like, okay, everybody wants the no-brainer volleyball wise. You'll take less stuff character wise if they're great, because regardless, you got to recruit the highest athletes that you can. Mm-hmm. So you're going to know about them. You're going to try to get research on them. But I found that when the back half of the roster is the players that you really have to invest the most in as far as like getting that research done, because like they make such a big difference as far as like coming to the school, developing over time, and having an influence on whoever the starters end up being.
Interesting.
But it's like same thing. You kind of have to, like, we can't officially talk to anybody until June 15th of going into their junior year, right? So obviously that rule changed recently, but I think part of the issue with the transfer portal now, you had so many kids making that decision when they're in 8th grade. Like me as an 18-year-old, I'm not asking the 14-year-old version of myself where I want to go to school. Like, So, but literally kids were making that decision at that time, right? Yeah. So I think some of it is like the kids not necessarily doing all the research as well. And I found that like you want kids that understand the process and know where they want to go and have an influence versus like players that want to, okay, what can this school give me, right? So for me, and I think most high-level programs, they're looking for people that like they're going to take advantage of the resources that are given to them versus like, okay, what can you give me? And then like we'll see what I do at that point, right? So they're a little bit more specific as far as what they're looking for a school. So when you're getting on a call with athletes and like, okay, like they actually have questions that are relevant to like to your institution, I think that's more of like, oh, well, it seems like they've been doing some research too versus like, okay, what does this staff have for me, or what is this what are you going to tell me that's going to make me want to come to your school, right? So
interesting.
Whether they know it or not, that's something that all coaches look for. We're looking for something that is, we always say kind of like a wow factor, but something that's going to connect you to the program. Like what's going to make this player be successful long term, whether it's like, okay, they might have had 4 generations of people that all went to that same school already.
Mm-hmm.
So that they're going to be all bought in being here regardless of what level they're at. Siblings, like where siblings have played, or even if it didn't even have to be the same sport. So you absolutely can get pretty far in depth with your research as well. And then by the time we hit June 15th, like social media, all that kind of stuff with the top kids, it absolutely comes into
wow,
the fold as
social
far as
media
making it.
nowadays.
Yes.
We don't talk about that much.
Well, like finding like
Can you get recruit on social media now? Like,
Is
I
that
know,
what you're
but
talking about?
also just how much access they're giving to recruiters
We
of
talked
their
about
life.
it. Who did we talk about it with?
That's insane.
Recently.
Maybe it was on the
We
podcast.
definitely was on the podcast.
We talked about it.
We talked about it on the podcast recently. But
Yeah,
you have
that's
to
a
go
new
through
resource.
Capono.
But that's the thing. It's like you have coaches that just don't want to do social media, like straight up. They don't want to do it.
Right.
So now it's like, okay, I got to find someone who on my staff who's willing to do it. And then how much time and resources are you pushing in to make sure your own social media is good, because that's what kids are following. So it's like, it's become a whole other aspect. And as far as like branding for your school, and then also like, okay, kind of looking at the same ways, like what is this kid posting? What are they putting on their stories? And this attitude, that stuff is just gonna like, oh yeah, it's up there for 24 hours, it disappears. Like, nope, that's not true. It's like, they don't always think about like, other athletes on the current team might be following these athletes too, and it's like, okay, you're posting stuff now, and like they're gonna have opinion about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, like recruiting and getting into that, it's like it's a relationship. You're building a relationship with them to see if it's going to be a good fit, because you don't know right away.
Right.
So you're building that relationship. Like the other players, same thing. It's like they're not just gonna. They don't care how good you are. If you're a jerk, they don't necessarily want to play with you. So if that's the kind of stuff you're putting out, and the coach is still pushing all in, like, oh, we got to get this kid, then you're gonna rub some heads with some players on the team. That's like, yeah, this is not the kind of player we want to be around. So
Wow.
So yeah, no, it absolutely is evolved more, and it's like, yeah, it's like people might be feeling less connected now than they were before when it comes to social media, because like they're always kind of looking for the validation and that kind of stuff all the time. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it's like, all right, if you're always posting stuff looking for validation, that's another sign that like, all right, what are you getting out of this? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I remember we talked about this. Was it ever a concern when we started out of system here, or the huddle once was? I remember I heard, I was like, Charlie was about to tell me like to shut it down and like not do it or anything. Was that ever like distraction ever in Hawaii? If you remember, it maybe wasn't even a big deal at all. Just out of curiosity.
To me, once again, like understanding the people, understanding the personalities of the team, it's like, we want you to be high level people,
right?
High level people. So as long as you can take care of your school, as long as you can take care of the volleyball part, and like, it's like, yeah, everybody, you come to college to like find stuff that you want to do. So to me, it's like, it's almost like an outlet. Like one of my old teammates, Jonas Umloft, like he was as efficient as a person that you would ever meet. He was so good at switching from one thing to another. But like when he like wanted a break, he did extreme things. Like he did skydiving, swim with sharks, like high lining, like 6'10" guy on a high line. Like,
Dude.
So when
That guy was something else,
right?
though. That guy was something. Do you guys remember?
Oh yeah, I remember Yogi.
That's his favorite player.
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah. Watched him live at Stanford. I watched him and Josh Walker. I cried after they lost for Stanford. MPSF semis.
But yeah, it's like everybody kind of needs that outlet. So for me, it's like, okay, that's the outlet they have. It's better than doing that than just like, I don't know, do drugging out somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, to me,
Better
it's
that
like,
than crack.
right? And it's like, okay,
All right,
you're
Charlie, it's you. The huddle.
Pick your poison there, buddy. I'll light her up right here, man.
Charlie, A or B? A or B? A or B?
Yeah, but no, it's like, I mean, you always have stuff like, especially I would say players that get into business and business majors, in which, okay, you start following the stocks in Hawaii, because you're so far off from that time zone when players kind of get obsessed with like, okay, the stop market and when it starts, like, okay, now you're losing sleep over.
Siki.
Sarkovic. I was gonna say,
That was his roommate.
And you're not maxing out what you can do physically, or like with your teammates when you're spending that much time away from the stuff that, like, okay, that's kind of the reason why you're there, right? So I don't think it ever got to a point where you guys were
Right.
It was getting taken away from what your goals were with the team.
Right.
And it's before the NIL stuff, so we were in front of it. Because now with the NIL stuff, now like
We didn't get paid
building your brand is, I mean, you set yourself up really well in some sports if you have like a platform and brand.
Yeah, it just opens up more doors. I look at like branding and that kind of stuff the same way that you kind of looked at academics before. So academics is like, okay, if you get good grades, then you can go to all these schools, right?
Yeah.
Now I feel like NIL is like, okay, if you're able to create your own income, then you can pivot a little bit more as far as what schools you can go after, because okay, like if the money's not necessarily a factor as far as like, okay, what they can give you, whether you're in state, whether you're out of state, and that kind of stuff, and like, yeah, so you have your own income coming in, then you can be a little bit more particular. Like, okay, I know if I go and play for this program or this coach, it's going to get me to a different level as far as where I want to be, and then you can kind of build off of that. So I feel like that the NIL part of it, it's actually adding to more options for student athletes when it comes to like, all right, what can I actually do? Where do I actually want to go? It's like, yeah, I can walk on for a year because I'm making this much money or something like that, or whatever NIL stuff they'll be able to add on top of what I already have, right?
What's the support like at Baylor? Like, do you guys like sell out? You guys play in the basketball arena.
Right.
It looks like the stand, right? You were talking about this the other
right.
day. I've seen it too, the pictures of it. It actually does look like the stand.
It is. It was the Farrell Center was the blueprint for the Stan Sheriff Center. So it's like
Right.
it's the same building.
Oh,
Yes.
wow, that's sick.
Yes.
Like even the tunnels, like every.
Yeah.
Wow.
How many seats?
What? That's
10,000. So UH, when they did, it was 10,300, and they have a little bit more seating lower than Baylor, but the Farrell Center was
What?
the
That's
blueprint for the
sick.
Stan Sheriff Center.
Josh likes to play close to home.
So it's like, yeah. So
Stan Sheriff Center is amazing.
yeah, we talked about differences.
That place is.
We talked about differences, but as far as like similarities, like I'm literally working in the same building.
That's
It's a
sick.
green school. Like
Is your office in?
my office is in the Farrell Center.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
What's the support like though? Do you guys like get close to selling out ever for like if Texas comes to town? Or like,
No, it's so Texas games have been the biggest, and we've gotten 7,000 like, and
Nice.
like that was when Yasi and then we're playing, but like I think the top 3 games we had were all against Texas, and it's like 7,000 to 6,000 people that are jumped to those games, but not as much. I think what makes Hawaii unique is that for sure, and a lot of what the Big Ten is doing is as well as what it's a premium event. Like it's prime time. You're putting it weekend. You're putting it at the end of the like night, but Big 12, especially like football and stuff like that, like it's middle of the day, right? Middle of the day games, like you might be playing midweek, stuff like that. So as far as like what the actual schedule is and like people actually taking their time to go, especially when it's streaming now, I think that affects our attendance more than like a school like Texas, in which like, yeah, their games are going to be at night. They're going to put it at the end of the day, and obviously keep it off the same football game days. But yeah, Gregory is like 4,000. Like, so we're playing in a pretty big arena comparison. But yeah, trying to build it still. That's something that we know we got to be better at. But I would say it's between around 2,000 and 2,000 on average when we don't have a big game.
Yeah.
Sorry, with the NIL, I just have one really quick question about NIL. Again, I do not know the rules very well. I don't know. In fact, I don't know anything. So I have a lot of questions. But can high school athletes make money before they go into college because of NIL?
Yeah, I mean the whole premise behind the name, image, and likeness is that all of a sudden student athletes like could get compensation for stuff outside of their sport. Like when I was going to school, like if I was really good at something outside of my sport, I still couldn't get paid for doing it because I was a student athlete. So that's pivot. So now outside of my sport, I can make money. Like, okay, like YouTube or something like that. I have followers, subscribers, that kind of stuff. I can make money off of doing that. Before that wasn't the case. So, so you can, and then like, who knows, like there's a lot of gray area as far as what they can actually make that in relation to their sport that they're doing. That's where you kind of get a little bit like more gray area with the high school athletes. But the biggest difference from NIL is before is like, okay, you can make money before you get to college, and now when you're in college, you can make money because you're an athlete.
That's sick. I always wondered that. I was like, are these high school guys like, or and girls allowed to make money? Because I was like, okay, now it makes sense. Got it. For recruiting, for boys versus girls volleyball, like boys volleyball, you walk into a gym. Obviously, like you said, you do blue chippers, but finding like the diamond in the rough is a lot easier. You walk into a girls tournament. Is it like overwhelming? Like, how the heck do you find players that maybe you don't have on your sheet? Maybe like, because has that ever been the case where like if it's they're not on your sheet, they're probably not going to get recruited because there's, I mean, how many courts are there, especially at Texas? How do you find players in just such a vast gym and like so many teams and players?
It's similar to the men's side in which, okay, you kind of know who the best clubs are. And so you can always like find so I'll say the most unique thing when I started last summer was like when I was recruiting at UH, I would always look for like, okay, what local club teams are going to be at nationals. And I'm like, okay, so when I'm done watching the kid, I have to watch, and I'll go check out some of the local teams, just like kind of support. But yeah, obviously if there's a good local kid, you want to know about it who might not be playing in the top division because they only travel to nationals. They don't qualify for anything else. So same thing, I get to the women's side, and I'm like, okay, how many club teams from Texas are there actually going to be at tournament? There was over 75 clubs.
Oh, my God.
What?
75 clubs at USAV.
They support them, Josh. Each and every one, baby. They need support.
1 point here. Okay.
There isn't team. So you're literally walking around, and there's like a Texas team in every pool across all the age groups. Like it's so.
Wow.
So as far as like just kind of managing it, you know who the top clubs are. You kind of have an idea who the top players are. And the first day, who are they playing? They're playing the weaker teams. They're playing the teams like maybe they have one good player. So that's how other players could possibly get on your list. But you kind of go from there. Kids email as well. If there's a connection or something, okay, regardless of the level they're playing at, if they feel like there's a connection, like, okay, really good student, either local, that kind of stuff, reach out. Been to camps and stuff like that. Okay, you go check them out. Same thing. Who are they playing against? And I think that's how you can kind of navigate it. But yeah, I get same thing at Hawaii. You get in the gym, first thing, I'm there all day. Like I stop maybe to get a little bit of something to eat, but I'm there all day, all the way throughout from the beginning of the game, especially to the last game, depending on who's playing. And same thing, I think on the women's side, there's just so many more schools. Like I could be in the convention center at 10 o'clock, and depending on the player, there's a lot of big programs that are all there. And maybe the head coaches, maybe they're not there in the gym the whole time, but okay, I know I got to go watch this kid at this time, so they'll be there as late in the gym as they need to, depending. And on the men's side, it's like at some point everybody's watched that kid enough that by the end of the day, you're not really getting ahead by staying later because there's only so many good players that you're going to find. But you're watching the top player play a team. Their pool got delayed, playing at the end of the tournament or the end of the night, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, who's this girl? Who's this girl? Who's balling out against like the last game of the day when everybody's tired and making a difference. So
it's also like a big part on the girls to take initiative and contact you. So like, how many like, if they contact you, is there like, what are the chances? Like, if you never heard of them, right? What are the chances you're gonna go to their court and go check them out if you're at the tournament that they're at?
Very slim, because there's only 1% of high school athletes that end up playing Division I anyway, playing in college. So you just do the math. We get a ton of emails. Depending on when tournaments are coming up, we could be getting 50 to 100 emails a day.
Oh my God! So how do you decide? Do you watch all the video? Do you have to watch all the video? Like
so
for 50 and 100? You watch 100 videos a day of recruiting?
So I'm not the recruiting coordinator at Baylor, so I don't have to do that anymore. But for UH, absolutely, you go through, you click through, and you go through and like watch a few seconds. If there's nothing that pops out, then you just you move on. Like you respond.
That's a good thing for people to know, though.
Yo,
Put a Yahtzee bounce in the first 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
You need a hook.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Even if it's not you. Pull up somebody else's bounce. Put it in.
No, you get hit in the face. You're like, like concussed. That's
I
your
don't have
first
any
shot.
good plays. I have bad play. I'll put the worst play.
I'll put
first.
worst play.
I'm gonna hook them in here.
If someone put their worst play, like it was like one of the worst.
You
volleyball plays
would
ever seen in
watch
your life.
for
Would
sure.
you watch?
You would watch. If it was incredibly
I
bad.
would say the music as well. Like depending on the song, like maybe that gets me to watch a little bit longer.
There you go.
Some coaches like absolutely. Oh, it's a certain song, they're cutting it off right away. But like that's why you have like everybody on staff gets the email. You should email everybody on staff because like you never know who's kind of gonna end up going through it. But yeah, if you're doing your due diligence, that's why like there's a designation on the women's site that says recruiting coordinator because you have to have someone that can manage and go through all of the information. Because,
videos a day.
right? That's what I'm saying.
So
It's like,
gnarly.
Oh my god, dude.
so yeah, we got nationals coming up, and it's like, yeah, you're getting a ton a day, and it's like, okay, just kind of get through, see if any names, like you're looking for the names that you already know as well, to kind of pop out. But yeah, it's like between June 15th and now we're getting tons of emails, and it's like, okay, just kind of go through and manage and stay on top of it. But yeah, it's like it doesn't take much to. I wouldn't say it takes much to just get on the list for somebody to go check you out.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say that's why like recruiting service videos are so boring to watch. Always, Gage would make a killing if as a highlight editor.
Yeah.
He would make some
Or
sick.
Joe Malik, our editor, right here.
If Gage started a service for that, he could make a killing.
It's like,
But also, this is really random. I don't know if it's big. I just want to know with Drive Nation and everything. I've heard about the legendary Pingdom. Is that talked about a lot in Texas?
you got to explain what the pingdom is.
So apparently he was bought out from a. Did you hear about all
Well,
this?
explain who
He's
Ping
gonna be-
is.
Yeah, all this whole thing I have no idea about. So go for it.
He probably knows way more than me. I just was at an event last year, and people started talking to me about this one coach who came from China like years ago, and he coached at TAV, was there, and he like developed a lot of really high level athletes, went on big schools, and like his team's like the team always to play on. And
Got
Drive
it.
Nation, who Jermaine O'Neal bought the club.
Oh, that he started the club.
Oh, he started the club, brought over a lot of people when TAV kind of shut down, and apparently Ping was bought out for like $100,000 from the club or something.
Club coach.
He's a club coach.
What do you mean bought out? He's under a contract by TAV.
I don't
Like a
exactly.
bribe or
He
something.
probably knows more.
How
but,
can you? Why are you buying him out?
But they call
what is this?
his whole team wears shirts the Pingdom.
But because he makes them.
I don't.
No,
That's what
no.
I said.
Oh, I bought him his
That's-
contract.
That's what I said. It's like, do they make him wear this, or does he make them
Or
wear?
are they just that big of fans?
He
of him?
probably knows more than I do. In Texas, I'm sure it's talked about a lot.
So yeah, from what I hear, he's a great coach. Like there's players on this team now. I'm not gonna say exactly who it is, but they have players that are literally commuting by plane to go practice. Like
By plane?
Who
by
would do that?
plane.
How many times a week?
They practice. They use the same thing. They kind of push it to the end
Uh
of the
huh.
week.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
But still,
Who would fly in to come play for another club?
God, who would ever do that? That's madness. It's maddening.
I went. I took one flight.
No, we had. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. But we had other guys who took flights and trains and
Took
automobiles.
one flight.
You're right.
And then stayed.
Well, we had guys that moved. You know, so it's like. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
yeah.
John.
So that tells you. I mean, obviously they're not doing that because they think he can't coach.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it's like, all right, he has enough credibility, and then it's like, oh, why don't you just go and coach in college? But like, there's a pretty big difference between coaching club and college, and like you've been saying, like all the responsibilities you have being
Yeah,
a college,
yeah.
and you're limited so much on the hours that you can be there. Like club, like even though you're limited because they're in high school and that kind of stuff, like you can practice as much or as long as you need to. Like college athletics, they limit you half of the year. How much you
it's
can be
a
in the
mess.
gym and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff you have to do in college athletics that you don't have to do in club. And like, yeah, if you kill it at club level, and especially North Texas area where there's so many clubs, it's like, yeah, who's the best club coach? And then like, okay, this is what it takes to get this guy to coach for my club because he brings players. Like players will come.
Yeah.
And in North Texas, where it's so competitive and all the clubs are trying to find ways to outdo the other, it's like, okay, you get the best club coach and you kind of go from there.
That makes sense.
Texas.
And
yeah.
having a legit team brings a lot to. It's like anything else. Like if you have the team at nationals, it brings a lot of notoriety and people are talking about your club a lot, and then
Pingdom.
your club can become like a household name.
Put together a trade package to go get club
The
coaches.
Rogerdom.
But, I mean, you can look at it the same way as college athletics, though, right? Because like,
Rogerdom doesn't work.
yeah, you look at especially with transfer portal stuff, like coaches getting new jobs or assistant coaches getting jobs and first opportunity. Like, yeah, the players. Oh, this coach finally got a head job. I mean, start pushing my players towards that because I know it's going to be a good experience and that kind of stuff. So to me, it's like it's the same thing. It's just like it's kind of you're shocked it's like happened at the club level. Like it probably happens in the high school level too. It's like, all right, I want to make sure my kid plays for this school,
Right.
because this coach is there, and then like you just see opportunity, and you just kind of what people will do for an opportunity is priceless.
So sorry to go back to a question on recruiting again. So crazy. You getting 50 to 100 videos a day. Why? Do you guys ever go on recruiting databases or volleyball recruiters? Like, what's the point of putting anything on there? If you're do you have the time? Two, like, is it like worth their while? Like, if someone's listening here and you say, really realistically, is it a good idea to do volleyball recruiting, stuff like that, and hire someone, or go on the database because you're getting an insane amount of video just sent to you?
Yeah, it's so that's the thing about recruiting, is so individual based. If you are someone who doesn't want to take the time and you're used to just paying people to do stuff for you, probably want to use a recruiting service. Right?
Understood.
So if that's not your strength, and it's like, okay, you see value in that, then absolutely do it. But like, I see just as much value in someone just taking the time to just write an email or make a connection with your program. Kind of goes a long way. But like, yeah, it's like, okay, you can think of it a little bit more in volleyball terms. If you are terrible at passing, like, and you want to show yourself in a good light as I'm a good passer, you're going to find somebody who's going to like try to help you do that. Like, okay,
right.
It's the same thing. If I'm terrible at, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to get my information out there, like, I'm going to find someone who's better at that. Like, I know head coaches that will not straight up not even look at anything from a recruiting service. And then you have some programs that maybe they're not getting the top tier players, the top blue chip players, and they need that because that's the only way they'll find out if a player is even interested in them. Right. So like probably not at the highest level that we're like, oh, we got to go through the database of the recruiting service to find players. But we pay attention to rankings and stuff like that. Like, okay, because that's good for, I mean, if we're able to pull a top kid as far as like where they're ranked. But yeah, as far as like probably like lower level D1, D2, those kind of like the only way you're going to find out if a kid is even interested in you is if you get an email from or maybe a recruiting service saying, hey, this kid is interested in going to your institution. So yeah, it like I said, it ranges a lot just as far as like where they are in the recruiting process, like between June 15th and their senior year. Like, okay, maybe I've been going through a whole year and I haven't been able to get in front of the coaches I want to. Now what? So.
Jared Elliott, John Cook. I need my new starting setter. I need to go on to the recruiting database.
Right.
Gotta find it. They're interested. You gotta find it. They're interested in me. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. How far do you think Baylor is out of? So, for example, I guess Baylor was the #1 team in the nation. What, 4 years ago? 4 years ago. Yeah. How come? What separates, you think, or what steps do you guys need to take to become a team like Texas, for example, Nebraska, who's
national
always
champion?
There? Yeah. All right, but that's their first one in a long time. But like being consistently there, like what's like the biggest difference, for, like being a school like Baylor versus being a UT, and what's kind of like the steps you need to take to kind of make it sure you're consistently there.
That's what makes it fun, right? You don't really know.
Right.
Texas this past year did something that most people hadn't seen. Like, they brought a bunch of transfers in and won a championship. Like, so that's a new model. I think between Wisconsin and Kentucky winning championships recently, like, those are first-time winners. So now all of a sudden we got teams that never won a championship that are competing at a high enough level to do that. So for Baylor, it's like you're kind of excited about the opportunity. Like, okay, we don't know what the blueprint is to win. Like, we have an idea. Like, Ryan's won championships in AIA. IYCHTH, the other assistant coach on staff, she won as a player. And then obviously I've won, so we know like the overall big picture, what has to happen to have a chance, but you can't rush it. You know what I mean? It's like you want players to get to the level in which they're able to compete, but they have to figure it out. Just like we were talking before, like we can't go out and just play for you. So different ways that you coach, different ways you style to get them to get to the level they need to get is so much more individually based off of those players and that team year to year than just like, okay, all of a sudden we're just because we bring in the top players, the top young kids, they're going to be ready to play right away. Like Andrew Rowan's pretty unique in which like that was a question mark. Like, okay, you had a first team All-American setter who's not your starting setter anymore, and now you have a freshman setting. Is he going to be able to push you over the hump and do something that nobody else has done in since 2006, right? So you don't necessarily know those pieces until those athletes get the opportunity. So for us, as any program, you're scheduling opportunities in which they can prove themselves and be able to get better. So I think how coaches schedule, I think, gives you an idea how good they think their team can be.
Got it.
Or where they want to get. If you're not playing against the best teams, or you're just trying to get the 20 wins and play a bunch of cupcakes on the way, then you're not necessarily pushing your team to the highest level. Like I think, for example, this past year, Texas, they didn't like they changed the recruiting rule now, which like not the recruiting rule, the playing season, which you can play. You have more dates, so it went from 28 to 32. So there shouldn't be as many colleges playing twice in one day as there was before. But even then, Texas didn't max out like all of their dates. They played some pretty high level games early in the season, and then like the Big 12 conference was one of the toughest conferences this year. So that's all they needed to get the high RPI and kind of go from there. So same thing, like we got to make sure we're scheduling opportunities to play the top teams. So you get that feeling like, all right, if we end up winning, how do we build off of it to be able to do it at the end of the year? If we end up losing, how do we make sure we catch up to have a chance to beat a team like that in the year?
So what do you think about Hawaii getting all those, as you say, cupcake games at the beginning of the season then?
So the thing that was unique about UH in the second year we won it, it was a pretty big shift in the roster. Like you left, Pat Gaspin, like even though like the team was good, there was a shift in like the personnel, right? So we're coming out of COVID. A lot of athletic directors still weren't comfortable scheduling because you're scheduling a year out, scheduling teams to go to Hawaii, right? So you still want to get those teams in because you want to have the revenue, because Hawaii actually makes money off of their games. So you have to have a certain amount of home games to make sure you're reaching that. But at the same time, it's like when you play in the toughest conference or one of the toughest conferences, you can balance that out a little bit with the early games. So you don't have to play as many hard games in non-conference. Because the Big West only has 6 teams, it's like you have a lot more non-conference games than anything on the women's side. But yeah, so like when you have to fill out the rest of the schedule and teams know that you're good, like not everybody's signing up to play you anyway.
True.
The difference this past year was, okay, we knew most of the roster was going to come back, knew they were going to be good, and all of a sudden, like the AD's like, hey, yeah, we'll send the teams back to Hawaii. So now this past year, you had one of the tougher schedules, and you had a lot of those teams at home. So then from the revenue side of it, you're averaging 7,000 people coming to the games this year. So it's some of it is like, yeah, you want to schedule them, but sometimes they don't want to play you. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, AD's like, I'm not sending people all the way to Hawaii to play. And like, who are you going to go play? It's like part of the men's side, I feel like it's growing the game a little bit. Like everybody has talked about that. And even UCLA has gone and played Morehouse and stuff like that. That's important. But everybody wants to have a tough schedule. You don't want to have the toughest schedule. Whoever has the toughest schedule has not won the championship. Like that's just how it is.
Hashtag Lincoln Memorial Rail Splitters. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was us in 2018. We had the toughest schedule. We had the toughest schedule, and we ended up not even making it into the tournament because we had dropped a few too many games. And it's one of those things in which, like, maybe if you don't schedule that as tough, then it's a different conversation. We get in for sure that year, but
that might be our closing call.
Sorry, Josh. Did you finish up what you were saying?
yeah. But that's, I think like I said, it's a science to the scheduling part. It's a science to recruiting. It's a science to scheduling. It's a science to training. So even though you have a lot of head coaches that get these opportunities that seem like they're going to do well, there's so much more traps than people realize, like, to just be able to be successful. And then, like, all of a sudden you get a head coaching job and you're not competing for in the tournament after a couple years. It's like, okay, you're doing things the right way. Do you have to already start pivoting? It's tough. That's why they get paid as much as they do, even though, like, we can talk about payment compensation, of course, across sports in comparison to volleyball, but and how we're still like the lowest, and we should not be that way. But yeah, it's tough to kind of navigate all that other stuff when you're trying, like, okay, I get a new team and trying to get players, I want to compete. It's a lot harder than it looks when it comes to just outside looking in.
Understood. I think that's our closing call again. Josh, thanks for hopping on, buddy.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure. I know.
Joshua, all the way back to Joshua Roadways.
All the way back to Joshua Roadways. I know as soon as we started this thing, you were just like, please get me on, please get me on, please get me on.
I was
So
waiting.
you're
I was like,
welcome.
man, when am I going to get the call? And now you guys had to get all established and stuff.
It's true.
And then I was hoping
Well,
to
we had
hop
to get
on
new
when there's
equipment.
like 10,
Exactly.
10
We got the
people
new equipment
watching.
for Josh. We're like, we can't just have Josh on. We used to do it with one mic. We used to have one Rode mic. And when we have a guest, it'd be Gage for an hour and 15 minutes holding up this heavy-ass mic, just going over here with it and then going over here with it. And then it'd be like terrible audio to begin with. So we're like, you know what? We got to get Josh his own throne, his own chair. Got to get him his own mic and his own camera. And then we can have him on the pod. We just have high standards for you, you know.
Appreciate it.
You know, just
Appreciate
because you have high standards for myself.
Oh,
I
yeah.
understand. I totally understood. But Josh, thanks so much for hopping on the pod.
Yeah, I just can't wait till the next time I come back and you guys are gonna like be wearing suit and ties and stuff.
Yeah. We're gonna have 2 mics then. 2 mics.
Oh yeah,
And
2
2
mics.
cameras.
And, like your hair done. Like there may be. I was hearing makeup.
Yeah.
It's gonna be on YouTube for who knows how many years.
We can have like Mac or Faye do your makeup if you want, though. If you wanted that.
Hair and
Alright.
makeup team.
Go ahead and add the filter. That'll be good enough.
Before we wrap up, just want to give another shout out to allvolleyball.com. Use your promo code OOS for 20% off. If you're a coach like Josh, you're players like us, it doesn't matter if you're in the volleyball world. They got what you need. Again, OOS for how much percent off, Micah?
20.
Let's go. Bingo. Just remember, if you can't handle the heat, goddamn kitchen. This has been another episode presented by allvolleyball.com.